All right, let's take a look at the end and kind of how things wrapped up at the end of the Holocaust. So, a lot of kids ask all year, why didn't they revolt? And you think about some of the obstacles that were put in place by the Nazis systematically so that revolting against the Nazi war machine is very difficult. Okay, so obviously you have the most superior armed military in the world at the time versus a virtually unarmed population. Okay, we talked about this yesterday, when they have collective responsibility. So, yeah, you might want to act out, but that's going to mean that your family, your loved ones will face the repercussions. Okay, so again, when you think of the retaliation, that does play a very large factor in creating an obstacle to resisting. Okay, we talked about this since the beginning of the class. The isolation of Jews, anti-Semitism. Again, we looked at the Babi Yar experience. Even if you escape that, people are not going to be willing to help you because it often is going to result in death for them. And, we've looked at this, the secrecy of the deportations and the train system and, from Treblinka having fake railroad stations set up. It's all part of this system to make resistance very difficult. And again, we talked about this in the beginning of class. The first people sent to Dachau, the first concentration camp, were people that spoke out against Hitler, all right, early on, 1933, all right? So, again, and we've looked at this, keeping the humanity. There's spiritual resistance. There's a lot of documentation of people holding schools and libraries and holding concerts and, still observing the Sabbath and just trying to keep that humanity, when they've been so dehumanized throughout this entire process. Okay. So now that's a spiritual or mental, psychological resistance. There is some physical resistance. So part of this, I'm going to go rather quickly, and it's not to necessarily get all the details. It's just to know that there was physical armed resistance against the Nazi war machine. So the first thing that we'll look at are these groups called partisans. So partisans are basically, Jews that escaped and basically build these communities in the forest. Let me go, and I'll come back to this. So you can see these areas where they would confiscate weapons, get ahead of the advancing Nazi military, and set up these communities in the forests. And they would look to, you can see here, one group in a Soviet forest was able to derail trains, kill over 3,000 German soldiers. Okay, so again, these would be called partisan groups, and they're really but they're very isolated. Okay, again, you think about this, they're all throughout Eastern Europe. These are forests, these are densely populated areas with no communication. Okay, and as much as 20,000 Jews fight as part of these partisan groups. Okay, now as many as 10,000 others are going to be saved by these groups because, again, as people escape, they were able to find refuge in these areas. There are armed resistance in the ghettos and the camps. So Warsaw, which we've looked at, the capital of Poland, the largest ghetto in Europe, there is an uprising of several hundred, okay, and they're able to, smuggle in weapons and because, again, it's an open ghetto, and you have 750 fighters, that go against the well-trained and well-armed German military. And at the end of it, you have mass deportations. Almost all of them are sent to Treblinka. But again, the point of these next couple slides is that there was an attempt of armed resistance, and they're all going to be met with superior force and very bad outcomes. Okay. Treblinka, similar. All right. You have a group that stole some weapons. They're able to kill a couple guards. You have some that escape. But again, the retribution on top of that is going to be very, cruel and punishing to those that are left behind. All right. Sobibor, again, a similar thing, lure in some SS officers, try to steal their weapons. You have, 300 prisoners, are able to get out. Most of them do not make it through the harsh winter. And these, again, this is in Poland, okay? And at the end, again, several 100,000 Jews murdered. Auschwitz, there's an attempt. You have one of the crematoria was blown up with dynamite. You have another attempt of, various escapees. About 600 prisoners escaped, and less than 300 are able to find refuge again. So there are attempts, okay, but most of them are going to be small scale in their success, and then the backlash will be pretty brutal, okay? Even handing out pamphlets, I mean, this is early on, the White Rose movement, an anti-Hitler group, handing out anti-war, anti-Hitler pamphlets, they'll all be killed, okay? So again, there is some resistance, but it's not this major grand scale, okay? So now focus on the end here, all right? So the end of the war is, the United States and Great Britain and Canada are liberating from France and moving towards Germany. The Soviets are pushing in from the east, and Majdanek is going to be the first major concentration camp to be liberated. So, we talked about this the other day. Auschwitz and Majdanek, they're on the eastern side. They were liberated by the Soviet Union, all right? And you can see, again, just the pictures and the videos that we'll look at later in class. Bergen-Belsen, this is in Germany, and this isn't even one of the death camps, all right? These are just the bodies that are found and had to be properly buried. Here's some survivors at Dachau on Liberation Day, all right? And here's just, again, the clothes and the amount, the size of the Holocaust is just mind-numbing. 14,000 pounds of human hair, 800,000 women's suits, hundreds of thousands of shoes. And this is a warehouse, and you could see the person here, Soviet soldiers, just walking through this at Auschwitz. Just overwhelming, okay? So how do we know all this stuff? Well, because, General Eisenhower of the United States, the head of the NATO forces, he brings along film crews, okay? And, he really wants to document this because it's really nothing like the world's ever seen before. And he's going to bring in German citizens, that turned a blind eye, that let this happen in their own backyard and make them tour these camps and do a lot of the burial and do a lot of the, heavy lifting, okay? Now, again, as the troops come in, you can see, just the, literally starving to death, infested with lice and disease. And we'll watch some videos later in class. Now, again, what do you do afterwards? Well, some are able to go back home, but a lot of their homes are destroyed. You still have anti-Semitism. There's still going to be violence after World War II against Jews, because anti-Semitism, it's still around today. And it's not like the Holocaust is just going to get rid of, hundreds or thousands of years of anti-Semitism. After the war is over, for the first time, they're going to put the military leaders on trial. So we'll have something called the Nuremberg Trials, where they will put the high-ranking Nazi officials on trial for war crimes, crimes against humanity. And this is going to set a precedent for the future of just holding people accountable for what happens during the war, okay? And many of them are going to be found guilty, be put to death because of their role in the Holocaust. And people are still being put on trial. There was a guy a couple of years ago, 97 years old. He was the accountant at Auschwitz, and he just got another life sentence. And again, he died shortly after. But, you think about justice, and it doesn't have an expiration date. And now the last question for the class here, what about the other Jewish refugees and a Jewish homeland where we started this class? We looked at, the starting in Israel and Jerusalem and the Jewish people. And basically what happens is you have this area in the Middle East, which was controlled by Great Britain for so long. And after World War II, the United Nations, headed by Great Britain and the United States, will help organize and create the modern-day country of Israel. So when you think of the stuff that happens today with all the issues, stemming after World War II with this Israeli and Palestinian conflict, a lot of this, so you have Palestine, this was all Palestinian land, and then after Israel is created, the country of Israel, Palestinians are losing land, and it's this back and forth, over rights over this land and the territory. So the main goal was to give the Jewish people, a homeland, but there were Palestinians living there, and it's just a back and forth, and endless wars that have happened since then, and still going on today. So again, that's just a very short recap of the end, and we will watch a couple videos and talk about this later in class. So see you guys.